All right. Good evening. We're late. Sorry about that. Let's get started. We are supposed to be learning Daf Tzadi Zayin, and we're starting at the Mishnah, a third of the way down on Tzadi Vav Amud Beis. So we're starting the second Mishnah. Just get this set over here. Sorry. All right. So again, Tzadi Vav Amud Beis, about 15 lines down in the Mishnah. The Mishnah writes, Ben Tesha Shanim V'Yom Echad. If you have a boy who is between 9 years and 1 day old and his bar mitzvah, Sheba al Yevimto, who, so he's, let's say his name is Shimon. His brother Ruvain was married to Rachel, and Ruvain died, and Shimon is 9. And Shimon is Baal Yevimto, and then he dies. So what about when she now falls to the third brother? Now she falls to Levi. So the halacha is choletzes v'lo misyabemes. The halacha is that there is chalitza, but no yibum. Next case, nasa isha. Let's say that this 9-year-old married a regular woman, umeis, hare zu ptura. This woman is exempt from yibum. She doesn't fall the yibum. Let's say that the 9-year-old is one of the brothers. He's married to a girl. And he dies. So there's no yibum by him, because he's only 9. So what we're testing here is the limits of the 9-year-old's efficacy. How powerful of a bia is that for a child who's only 9? Next, ben tesha shanim v'yom echad sheba yevimto. Let's say, going back to our first case, that a 9-year-old is with his yevama. But umishehigdil, when he became bar mitzvah, nasa isha acheres umeis. Then, when he was 13 years old, on his 13th birthday, he married another person, and then he died. So, imlo yadas harishona mishehigdil. If after the time he became a bar mitzvah, he was not with his first wife, the wife who he was with when he was only 9, but never after they were bar mitzvah, then harishona. Choletzes v'lo misyabemes, then the bia had some type of impact, and she should get chalitza not yibum. V'ashniya o choletzes o misyabemes. So the Tanna Kama holds that the wife should have either chalitza or yibum, but she is more halachically has a stronger zika than the 9-year-old who was intimate with the Yevama before he turned bar mitzvah. Reb Shimon argues. Reb Shimon Omer miyabim le'ezo sheyirtze v'choletz l'shniya. He argues and says that the bia of the ben tesha to the Yevama is the real deal, and she is subject even to yibum, and then so he's choletz. He's miyabim le'ezor shirtze v'choletz l'shniya. And then the Gemara lists the last and final din. We're about a third of the way down on Tzadi Vav Amud Beis, and that din is that echad shu ben tes shanim v'yom echad v'echad shu ben esrim shelo hevi shtei sairos. The halacha of a 9-year-old who is obviously pre-bar mitzvah age, and someone who's 20 years old, but who was never maybe shtei sairos, he never grew 2 hairs, b'zakan tachton. So therefore, he is equivalent to the 9-year-old, which is halachically very interesting, because obviously we're concerned about this person being a sris. We're concerned about this person being halachically sterile, and that person can't marry in. So if this person is sterile, so he's treated like a ben tes, meaning all of the applications in our Mishnah of the bia of a ben tes would be true of the bia of a ben esrim shelo hevi shtei saros. And we'll get into this a little bit later. Omar Rava. In the beginning of our Mishnah, in the third case of our Mishnah, we said that in regards to a case where there are 2 brothers, that shnei yevam in michlatz chalza, that there has to be chalitza but yivume lo miyabma. That din that there's only chalitza but not yibum, says the Gemara, lo tema, don't say that that's true. Hecha deika tzara, deika lemigzar mishum tzara. Don't say that that's only true, that there's only chalitza when there's a tzara, because the hahacha leika tzara. Here there is no tzara, and what do we see the din is? That it's michlatz chalza yibume lo miyabma. So when we're dealing with 2 brothers who are getting this yevama because of the death of their older third brother, or I guess the first brother, and the remaining 2 get this wife as a yevama. So there it's chalitza without yibum. We're just about halfway down, 10 lines into the wide lines. Nasa isha umeis. This is a din that we already learned about, the power of a katan, the power of the bia of a katan. Tanina lahad tana rabbanan shota v'katan shanasu. They got married, so let's focus in on the katan. It applies to a shota also, because obviously those 2 are grouped together because of their level of das. So here we have a katan shanasu. He got married. Umeisun. It shows same pturos min achalitza min yibum. The halacha is that the katan is a very low level of tashmish amita. And then we had the case of the ben tesha. The ben tesha was intimate with his Yevama when he was 9. But once he became a gadol, he was not with his Yevama anymore, but he married a regular woman. So we spoke about that case. So the Gemara says, why don't we say, V'yasu bias ben tes k'maimer begadol v'tidchet tzar miyibu? Why don't we say that the Tashma Shamita of a 9-year-old is similar to Maimer in a gadol? We know that Maimer by a gadol is Kedusha Yevama as a din derabanan. Why don't we say the same exact thing by the bia of a 9-year-old? In which case, with Tidchet Tzara, that had there been a Tzara, she would be able to be marrying Lashuk without any interruptions. So says the Gemara, Amarav, Lo asu bias ben tes k'maimer begadol. We just don't hold that way. We don't say that the bia of the 9-year-old is similar to Maimer and a gadol. Shmuel Amar, asu v'asu. Absolutely, we do hold that way. He holds Lamaisa that a bia of a ben teshav yom echad is similar to that of Maimer by a gadol. V'chein Amar Rav Yochanan. Let's remember Rav Yochanan's name because he's going to be the crux of the Gemara until the 2 dots on the top of Tzadi Zayin Amud Aleph. V'chein Amar Rav Yochanan asu v'asu. Says the Gemara v'yasu. According to the first shita that rejects this, which is the shita of Rav, why not? Why don't we say that the bia of the ben tes is like a Maimer begadol? Says the Gemara, you're right. It's Tanoihi. It's really a machlokas in regards to the katan. And here's how it plays out. Hachtana de arba achin. This was a Mishnah that we learned many moons ago, or a couple of moons ago, about 4 brothers. There, Gazar Mishum Tzara. There we had a Gzera that we treated him. We treated the katan's bia in a particular way. Bashmi'inan begadol v'huadin bekatan. Yes, that case is talking about a gadol, but the halacha applies equally to a katan. The Hai de Amar gadol. Why is it that the case by arba achin said by a gadol? Mishum de begadol kai. We just happen to be talking about a case of a gadol, but the din actually applies equally to a katan. And v'hai tana dehacha, but in our case, svirale asu v'lo gazar mishum tzara. Here we don't have a gzera because of the second wife. V'ashmin bekatan v'hadin begadol, and the din should be the same between a katan and a gadol. V'hai tekamar bekatan to bekatan kai. That's what we were talking about. So this is the din, the machlokas between Rav and Rav Yochanan. But Lamaisa, Rav Yochanan was of the opinion of asu v'asu, that yes, we treat the bia of a 9-year-old like the maimer of a gadol. So says the Gemara 2/3 of the way down. Also Rabbi Lazar, important historical note for our Gemara. Rabbi Lazar was a Talmud of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Lazar was a 3rd century Amora. Rabbi Yochanan was a 1st and 2nd century Amora. Rabbi Lazar was his Talmud. So Rabbi Lazar went around quoting Rabbi Yochanan. It's his Rebbe. Amar l'shmaisa be medrasha. Below Amar mishmed Rabbi Yochanan. He's walking around the base medrash. He said, "Did you hear this din that Rabbi Yochanan taught?" But he didn't say Rabbi Yochanan. He said, "Did you hear this din? The bia of a ben tes is like Maimer for a gadol," but he didn't say it in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So it says the Gemara, Shama Rabbi Yochanan ikpid. He got very upset. He was very makbid on it. Why didn't you quote it by name? So a couple of people in the base medrash saw that Rabbi Yochanan was upset, Rav Ami and Rav Asi, and they went over to comfort him. Ol legabe Rabbi Ami v'Ravasi. The two of them, they saw Rabbi Yochanan was flustered in the corner of the base medrash, sitting on the mizrach with his shtender, and they're like, "I see what happened. We heard Rabbi Lazar saying this shita, but he didn't say it in the name of his Rebbe." They all had a small base medrash. It wasn't like the Mir where there's like 10 locations. It's all one spot, small place. So they knew what was going on. They picked up the social cues. Amrule, Rav Ami and Rav Asi said to Rabbi Yochanan, Lo kachaya ma'aseh b'beis hakneses shel Tveria. This kind of story happened. There was a big machlokas about something similar to this, not in the case, but in regards to who quoted who. Ben Nagar, in the case of a particular piece of wood, sheyesh barosho glustra. It was a lock. What was a lock in their day? So back in the day, they'd have a hole on the wall, they'd have a hole on the door, and when they closed the door, the 2 holes would align, and they'd put a peg in between the 2 holes to trap the door from moving. And there was a ball at the top of the peg to make sure that the ball wouldn't fall through and the lock would actually hold place. This is what they, so we're talking about this item that looks like a peg with a ball on the top. Again, it was slid in between these 2 interlocking holes to make sure the doors would lock. So there's a machlokas in Hilchos Shabbos about this glustera. Shenechel kubo Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yossi. They were fighting about it. Very important halachic discussion. Take a look at Rashi, 4 lines from the bottom. The nagar sheyesh barosho glustra, this peg that had a ball on the top, sherosho of v'ro'ui l'shchikas shumin u'l'she'ar tashmish. So yes, it's true that it can be used as a door lock. That's true. But having a rounded head at the top of the peg also meant that it could be used to crush spices or to crush garlic. And therefore, they said, can you use this for something like locking a door? Rabbi Lazar says you're not allowed. And 3 lines from the bottom in Rashi, Rabbi Yossi Mater, and in fact, this is how we paskin halacha l'maisa. Let's say that you have a hammer, but you want to use the hammer not to hit a nail. That's an isser doraisa. It's a big problem. Makeh b'patish is literally the name of the malacha. Not a good idea. But you don't want to use it for that. You want to use it to prop open a door. You want to use it to crack open a walnut. You can use it for those things because we paskin this way. Halacha l'maisa. We paskin like the shita of Rabbi Yossi, that a klisha malachto le'isr is mutter l'tzorach gufo l'tzorach makomo. That let's say, again, the hammer is a great example, but there are other examples from around the house. Some poskim consider scissors to be a klisha malachto le'isr. It's a little difficult. I don't understand that exactly, but some poskim do write this. And therefore, if it's a klisha malachto le'isr, then I would use a pair of scissors on Shabbos to cut the sugar packets perfectly without cutting any letters, because there's a very thin space where there's no letters. So according to those who hold that scissors are klisha malachto le'isr, and therefore it's mutter l'tzorach gufo l'tzorach makomo, you're good to go, no problem at all. That's allowed. So this is a machlokes in another Masechta, but the Gemara says what happened over there. We're back in the Gemara, 15 lines from the bottom. They tore a sefer Torah out of anger. Says the Gemara, karu sefer daitach. I mean, seriously, these great Amoraim tore parchment like that? That's crazy. Says the Gemara, no. It ended up getting torn, not intentionally, just ended up getting torn. Bahaya Sham Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma, and Omar, he says, Tmiya ani im lo yehiyeh beis hakneses zu avodas kochavim. He says it's got to be that there's some type of avodas kochavim going on here, and it turned out that was in fact the case, and that made Rabbi Yochanan even more upset. What was he? They were giving him musar, like you're trying to say, don't be angry because the last time someone was angry, it turned into a beis avodah zarah. So it says the Gemara, Hadar ikbid tfei, Amar chavrusa nami. All of a sudden we're best of friends. You're not, what are you doing? You're learning with me right now? You're teaching me the sugya of glustera so that you can tell me not to get angry because otherwise it'll become a beis avodas kochavim. It's not the right approach. So then, al legabe Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi. Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi was the diplomat. He was the politician in the room, and he knew how to talk down Rabbi Yochanan from his anger. Amar le, the pasuk says, kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe abdo, kein tziva Moshe es Yoshua, v'chein asa Yoshua lo heisir davar mikol asher tziva Hashem es Moshe. Now we know, of course, that Kadosh Baruch Hu taught the Torah to Moshe, his servant, and Moshe taught everything to Yoshua, and Yoshua didn't forget anything. He was the perfect receptacle for the Torah. Moshe kibul Torah Mesinam Sar Yoshua, Yoshua there's a Canaan, right? All of that, fine. Yoshua remembered everything. So it says the Gemara, V'chia al kol davar she'amar Yoshua haya omer lahem kach amar li Moshe. You think every single sentence that he said, he'd say, the halacha is it's a klisha malach d'olesser, I learned it from Moshe. The halacha is that it's not a klisha malach d'olesser, I learned it from Moshe. Every sentence, every halacha, every phrase, no way, of course not. It says the Gemara, Yoshua, Yoshe v'dorish stam. Yoshua would sit and he'd talk in halacha, he'd talk in learning with everybody. They'd ask shilas, he'd answer the shilas. They'll call yodim shetorah shel Moshe. Everybody knew. It wasn't from him. Everybody knew that it was from Moshe. It wasn't Yoshua. So this was the comfort that Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi, was it Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi? Yeah, the Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi gave to Rabbi Yochanan. He said, just like Yoshua didn't quote Moshe every time he opened his mouth, Rabbi Lazar is the same, Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Lazar is your Talmud. He's not quoting you by name, but everybody knows that he's your Talmud. So you should feel comforted. Okay, he didn't quote the din of a ben test that is like a mimer of Shabbat. Who cares? Everybody knows that he's your Talmud. So that's what he says. Amar lehem Rabbi Yochanan pivots and he turns his head to Rav Ami and Rav Asi and he says, how come you don't know how to give me comfort like this guy? This is the chakira. Do you like to give musar in a way that is head to head? Or do you like to give musar in a way that's meaningful? So this is much more constructive. So fine. Certainly the second approach was better. But the question still stands. Why was Rabbi Yochanan so upset? Come on. This is Rabbi Yochanan. Why was he upset that somebody didn't quote him by name? It says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan, my time why was he so upset? It says the Gemara, Dam Rabbi Yehuda Marav, my dechsiv agur ba'alecha olamim, that we will dwell in your tents for worlds. Is it possible for a person to live in two worlds? Ella, Amar David Lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono Shel Olam, Yiratzon, turning to the top of Tzadi Zayin Radal. David says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yiratzon sheyomru davar shmua mipi ba'olam hazeh. They should say something in my name in this world. Absolutely. Rashi, sheyehu sifasai naos bekever ki'ilu anichai. Rashi says, so that when I am in my kever, my lips will move and it'll be as though I am alive. How would we know that that happens? Top line, Tzadi Zayin Radal to Amr Rabbi Yochanan. Mishum, Reb Shimon ben Yochai. Look who's talking now. Rabbi Yochanan is the one who's upset. Why is Rabbi Yochanan upset? Because this is Rabbi Yochanan's din. What did he say? Kol Talmid Chacham Shomrim Davar Mishuma Mipi Ba'olam Hazeh Sif Sosav Dovevos Bekever. Okay, so now we have a little bit more color to the story. Rabbi Yochanan was annoyed that Rabbi Lazar didn't quote him by name because Rabbi Yochanan also taught Rabbi Lazar to quote by name dafka because it's good for the person who dies. Rabbi Yochanan wasn't dead yet, but he wanted him to be in the good habit of quoting Rabbi Yochanan so that Rabbi Yochanan could have the zechuyos for when he were to die. Amar Rav Yitzchak ben Zira v'tem Shimon Nazira. Ma'ikra, what's the pasuk? V'chikech kiyein atov holech ladodim l'meisharim dovevei sifsei shanim. What does this mean? Kekomer shalanavim. It's like a vat of grapes. Ma'komer shalanavim kem shemaniach adam etzbo alav miyad dovev. If a person takes a vat of grapes that are fermenting and you simply touch the surface of the water, it sends ripples throughout the water. So that's why it's good for us, as much as is possible, to quote people by a name when we're quoting their halachos. As Hirsch showed this to me, there's this young Rav in Eretz Yisrael who's referred to as the Yanuka. Have you heard of this? Mm-hmm. Unbelievable. This guy's like 33 years old. All the Gedolim are like sitting. You gotta just Google the Yanuka, Y-A-N-U-K. You gotta watch it. It's uncanny. Say that again. Yanuka, Y-A-N-U-K. The Yanuka. He's very young. I think he's in his young 30s. And he sits and learns all day, but all of a sudden people are like asking him to give shiurim. And when he gives shiurim, not only are they beautiful, but he can give any Mari Makom anywhere and like down to the page. Like it's really not normal. It's really something like you're almost like choshesh that something's weird, like it's unbelievable. Right. You like, he's so young. Okay, Rav Chaim Kanievsky Mele, he was 94 years old. He learned Shas, 80, 90 times. I understand. That's fine. People lining up. It's a strange picture. It's a strange picture. Usually the white beards are speaking. Right. And the brown beards are surrounding. Right. So this is the din of Rabbi Yochanan. This is why Rabbi Yochanan was annoyed that Rabbi Lazar didn't quote him by name. Annoyed again. It's a higher level. I don't mean to lower what's happening here. We said at the end of our Mishnah, the Mishnah that we started with on Tzadi Vav Amud Beis, that the Mishnah there writes that Echad ben Teisha Shanim, and as well a person who's 20 years old but with no saros, with no pubic hair, that they have the same din. Minhu, we have a steer from another Mishnah. Ben Esrim Shana Shalaviv Shtei Saros Yaviu Rayashu Ben Esrim Behu Asris. If in fact we have someone who doesn't have two pubic hairs, we have to bring a proof that he's in fact of age. Look at his birth certificate. All of a sudden we call him Asris, and then what's his din? Lo Choletz V'lo Meyabim. By him, we say no chalitza, no yibum, but that wasn't the din in our Mishnah. By the din in our Mishnah, we said that there was chalitza without yibum. So that's a stira. This Mishnah continues, though, with the status of a woman of similar biological challenges. Bas Esrim Shana, you have a girl who's 20 years old, a woman. Shelo Hevia Shtei Sairos. She doesn't have Shtei Sairos. Yaviu Raya Shi Bas Esrim. We have to prove her age. And Behi Islandis V'lo Choletzes V'lo Misya Bemes. So this is a kasha in our Mishnah, because our Mishnah said that the Ben Tes is equal to the Ben Esrim without Shtei Saros. But our Mishnah says that a Ben Tes, if he is with his Yevamos, she's Choletzes V'lo Misya Bemes. Yet here, for the Ben Tes, who has no Shtei Saros, which we said was if A equals B and B equals C, so A equals C. If you're saying that the Ben Tes is going to generate chalitza but not yibum, and you're saying a Ben Kaf is the same as a Ben Tes, then why does this Mishnah say that the Ben Kaf does not generate chalitza and yibum? It says the Gemara, about a third of the way down, we're heading toward the end of the parak. No. The case over here in the Brisa that we just quoted a couple of lines ago, that's when he was born with Simonei Sris. Our Mishnah on Tzadi Vav Amud Beis, the person wasn't born with any Simonei Sris. Nothing. He looks like a perfect. Remember, we spoke about the case of Simonei Sris, that maybe he urinates from two places and all the different biological things that we had learned about. Fine. So it says the Gemara that's why in that case it's different than our case. So this Brisa that we just learned is talking about a baby who was born with Simonei Sris. Amarava dekanami. This makes a lot of sense actually, because when you look at the Brisa we just quoted at the two dots a few lines ago, Diktani who asris shmamino. Says the Gemara b'chilo noldu lo Simonei Sris ad kama tani. Ad kama, excuse me. If a person is born like in our Mishnah without any simon Yisrael, he's 20 years old and he has no shtei saros, and how long is he equivalent to a 9-year-old for? When do we put him in the bucket of a sris? It says the Gemara, Tani deber b'chia ad rov shnosav. If you're looking for musar, this should do it. Says the Gemara that a person should be considered a sris even with no simanim, just the absence of hair, by the time they've filled up half of their years. Kiyasa the Kama de Rava, and the Rishonim here right, that half of your years is 35 years. I just celebrated my 42nd birthday on Shavuos. So I guess we're past. No, my Goyish birthday. I was born on Kaf Siva. Got a couple more days. It says the Gemara, Kiyasu l'kame de Rava. Rava would give musar in cases like this, halachic musar. This is what you should do. Ikachush, if the person was very frail, Amar lehu zilu avrayu. Go eat some pancakes. Go get yourself healthier. I don't know if pancakes are healthier, but go eat some good healthy food. The bari, if he was a zaftig guy, he's eating a lot. He looks good. Amar lehu zilu akchushu. Put him on a diet. Tahani simanim. Sometimes the simanim of normal puberty, of having the pubic hair, says the Gemara, zimnin de nisre machmas kichishusa. Sometimes a person loses those hairs because they're weak, and vizimnin de natre machmas briusa. Sometimes they're so full, they eat such good food that also causes problems. It's very hard to understand biologically what this means. Other than like alopecia and some other strange diseases, this would have to be something unique. We're not used to this. Okay, Hadron Alacha Isharabba Baruch Hashem. We finished another parak. We're about to turn the corner to the 100th blot. A couple more days, and Yiratam, we should come back to this daf in 7.5 years. Baruch Hashem. Starting a new parak now, a parak called Nosin Al Ha'anusa. This is more reminiscent of the Yevamos of old. Smile.
Remember.
What?
It could be worse.
It's always true. You could always be Ruvain. How many times has he died in this Maseches? Unbelievable. And it's not even by my own construct. It's the Gemara does it. Yeah. Okay, new Mishnah. Of course, the pasuk speaks about an ones and a mafata, a person who violates a woman or seduces a woman. So here the Gemara, the Mishnah quoted in Nosin al ha'anusa ve'al ha'mafuta. One can get married in a case of an anusa and a mafuta. A little hard to know what's going on from the words here. A special thank you to Rashi. Take a look at the first Rashi in the parak. Dibra maskel nosin al ha'anusa. La'achar sha'anas upita es ha'isha. After a man either violates or seduces a woman, mutar lisa bita ve'achosa ve'ima. He's still allowed to marry her female family members, no problem. So onis and mafuta, that's not a din in marriage. It's usher. You're not allowed to do it. You're chayav to pay whatever the onish is, I think 50 shkalim, whatever it is. But you're still allowed to marry the relatives. That's the first din of the Mishnah of nosan al ha'anusa v'ala mafuta. Ha'ones v'hamefate ala nesua chayav. However, if that case was reversed, that would not be true. If a person would marry, would be me'anes from a fata, a person when someone is married, that's of course going to be aser. No say adam anusas aviv u'mefutas aviv. Let's say that a father, Ruvain's father, whatever it is, Yitzchak, whatever it is, he was me'anes from a fata, a woman, so it's mutter for the son to marry that woman. Anusas bito u'mefutas beno. As well, anusas beno umefutas beno. Or if a man's son violated or seduced a woman, he could marry that woman as well. We've learned about this din already because we're concerned about knaf aviv, as we'll see at the bottom of the page, that even though it's true they were never married, but we have a chumrah, a halachic deoraisa chumrah potentially, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that to marry anusas aviv is not allowed. But even though the anusas aviv, they were never married, but the fact that this woman was with a man's father makes it inappropriate for the son to also be with that woman. The Gemara opens. We're not going to be finishing the whole thing. We're going to go about 2/3 of the way down. Yirtzeh Hashem will catch up tomorrow, but we're getting there. So it says the Gemara as follows: Taninu lahad tanu rabbanon. We have a brayso that's very similar. Anas isha motor lisabita. That's very explicit, very similar to our Mishnah. That if a woman is violated, then it's permissible to marry her daughter and also other family members as well. Nasa isha, but if a woman is married, asur lisabita, then you're not allowed to marry her daughter.
Married to him or married to someone else?
Either way. Well, no, for sure, either way. The Psukim and Chumash say he should marry her. But here we're talking about even marrying family members, and that's considered mutter. Or minhu, we have a brisa that seems to disagree with what we're learning in our Mishnah and in this brisa. Hanitan min ha'isha, if a person, hanitan, they say rumors about him that he was with a woman, aser be'ima ubebito ve'achosa. So how does that work? If in fact you're actually going to be ma'anes or mafata woman, you can marry their relatives, then all the more so if all they're doing is saying rumors about you, right? Should be. Says the Gemara, you're right, midrabanan. It's an isur derabanan to be with them, but midoraisa it's mutter. Says the Gemara, v'kol heichad ikisur derabanan, tani nosen lechatchila. It seems to be that from our Mishnah that it's a din lechatchila because it says nosen. It doesn't say that v'im nosa. Nosen is a language of lechatchila. So how can it be that really it's an isur derabanan to marry the family members of this anus or mafuta? How can it be that it's an isur derabanan and you're using lechatchila language? Says the Gemara, kitznan mas nisan la'achar misa. Wow, whole different parameter for our Mishnah. The parameter that was just added to our Mishnah is that yes, you can marry the family members of the anusa or the mafuta, but only after the anusa or the mafuta die. So let's say that Ruvain is Ma'anes Shoshana. So then Ruvain can marry any of the family members of Shoshana, mother, sister, whatever, as long as she dies first. That's the din d'Rabbanan. And that's why our Mishnah is l'chatchila, because our Mishnah is la'achar misa. So this is where like you'd see like Kahati would add in this line in the Kahati, it'd be like, oh, nosin, in our Mishnah, nosin al ha'anusa val mafuta, and he would add in la'achar misas ha'anusa, because that's an important parameter added to our Mishnah. Asks the Gemara, minohani mili, how do we know this din that one, midoraisa, is allowed to marry the family members of an anusa or a mafuta? So says the Gemara, the Tanu Rabbana, the Kula Ne'amar Shchiva. The language of Isser in the Torah by the Arayos is lo sishkav. It's Shchiva, lying with a woman. The Khan, but over here by Anus and Mafuta, it says Kicha, lo marlach derech likuchen asra Torah. When we're talking about derech likuchen, when in fact there is a marriage to a particular woman, then that woman who you married, her family members are asra. But if you didn't marry her and you were quote unquote only me'anis or mefata her, so then you're still allowed to marry her family members. If that's true, we have a very big problem. Elamayata, says the Gemara, 2/3 of the way down, a little bit more, 10 lines into the new parak. So look at the pasuk by Achoso. Let's see which language it uses, Shchiva or Kicha. Tichsiv ish asher yikach es achoso basavivo basimo hachanami derech kichu da'aser derech Shchiva shari. Wow. That would be a very big, kula. We see the language of kicha is used over here, and then kicha implies that if there is ones and mefata, that you can still marry the person's relatives, which is ridiculous. Of course, that's not true by a sister. Omar le, Abaye responds to Rav Papa, no. Likuchen ksivi b'Torah stam. We have the word likuchen all the time. So haroi lekicha kicha. When the word lekicha should be a halacha kicha like marriage, that's how we use it. And haroi l'shchiva shchiva. But if the word is only meant to lie with, meaning in a non-marriage way, but obviously in a tashmish way, so then we have to use the word shchiva. Basically, the word is like a utility player. You have to know exactly how to use it in context. Otherwise, you're not able to ask a question like this. Of course, you're not allowed to sleep with the family members of a sister who is ma'anes. Of course not. You can sleep with her half-sister. You're not allowed to do that. That's for sure. Says the Gemara. That was answer number 1 to the Marimakom of Minohani Mili, because we had asked, how do we know that one is allowed to marry the family members of an anusa or a mafuta? So then says the Gemara, Rava Amar, answer number 2, that anas isha motor lisa bita mehacha. We know that if a woman was ne'enas, that the man who was me'anes her is allowed to marry her daughter from the following. The pasuk, 2 different pasukim that contrast one another. Says the Gemara, here's pasuk number 1, that the erva, one is not allowed to be intimate with the granddaughter either through the son or through the daughter, and habas bina dida ubas bita dida gali, but it would be okay if the granddaughter was on her side. Uchsiv erbas isha ubita lo sigale as bas bina as bas bita lo sikach. So which one is it? Haketzad kan beanusa beonsin kan benisuin. So that's how we know that it's mutter if a person was ne'enas. Then it's mutter for someone to marry their family members. Maybe I should reverse that, how we understand where anusin applies and where nisuan applies. Says the Gemara, you can't say that because arayos she'er ksibuhu b'nisuan ika she'er be'onsin leika she'er. By onsin, there's no din of she'er. It's only by marriage. The she'er, it's an ones is an ones. If you're being ma'anes someone, you're not able to marry that person anyways. It's only about onsin. Very good. That brings us to the din of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, at the end of our Mishnah, it said a din of aser be'anusas aviv u'mefutas aviv. That means that if Ruvain is the son of Yitzchak, and Yitzchak was me'anes sprinza, so then there's no din, then you're not allowed to marry her or her family members, because as the Gemara will say now, Amar Rav Gidel, Amar Rab, my time is Rabbi Yehuda. Why was he makbid here? D'chsiv lo yikach ishas eshes aviv v'lo yigale knaf aviv. A double language. You can't take the wife of your father, and as well, you cannot reveal the knaf aviv. Knaf shera aviv lo yigale. Knaf is like a poetic language of sorts, that a woman who sees his father, so then he cannot be with her. That's inappropriate. Says the Gemara, who says that the pasuk is talking about anusa? The din that we're talking about in our Mishnah and for the ensuing Gemara is all about anusa and mafuta. But that pasuk, that is talking about anusa and mafuta, says the Gemara, because there's another pasuk just before. You have to give 50 shekel. When do you give 50 shekel? That's by anusa. So since two psukim earlier is talking about anusa, so too over here. Says the Gemara, and if that's true that we know it's talking about anusa, then Rabbi Yehuda really has an awesome argument as to why he forbids a son to marry the relatives of the anusa or the mafuta of his father. Says the Gemara, that's because it's not really a pure juxtaposition of psukim. If in fact the two psukim were really mamish next to one another, kidika amris, you'd be right. You'd be right to say that what we're talking about is Rabbi Yehuda Shita, and therefore the son is not allowed to marry the family members of the Anusas Aviv. However, Hashta de lo samechle, there is a pasuk separating these two psukim. Therefore, you cannot infer the way you did. And miboile, we need that drasha for something else. Okay, a side issue. The pasuk is talking about something else, and therefore you cannot infer that the shita should be like Rabbi Yehuda to restrict the son from marrying the family members of the Anusas Aviv. The Gemara goes back to the basic pshat of the pasuk, Umay knaf aviv. What does it mean to say that there's a limitation from a son to be with his father's partners who are knaf aviv? Knaf haroi la'aviv lo yigale. Anyone that the father was with, that is someone who he should not be with. Says the Gemara, we could have inferred that from another din. We're not going to go into the psukim. The Gemara doesn't quote the psukim. We're not going to go into them now. The tepu klei mishum dodaso. The psukim by dodaso have restrictions which seemingly would have applied by our case too. Says the Gemara, you're right, but that's a second issur, lav or aleh b'shnei lavin, to teach us that if there is tash b'shamita with knaf aviv, if a man were to violate knaf aviv, he'd violate two isurim. Says the Gemara, v'tepu klei mishum yavam l'shuk. Maybe we should say that had this person been a yavam, then we're dealing with the case of Yevamos l'shuk. Says the Gemara, lav or b'shlosha lav, and you're right, we're dealing with three isurim. Says the Gemara, v'yibaisem la'achar misa. Rashi, what does this mean, la'achar misa? Shemes aviv, deleka lav the Yevamos l'shuk. We're able to remove the case of Yevamos l'shuk if a particular person died, and that brings it back down to two isurim. Top of Tzadi Zayin Amud Beis. In modern America, we have a lot of catchphrases and colloquialisms. I can assure you that none of our catchphrases were as sophisticated as these 7 catchphrases. These are things that people actually said to one another, and they are so complicated. Let's just take a look at Rashi before we start. Rashi on the top of the page, Dibra Maschil, Ach Me'av, Mashalos Hein, V'regilin b'nei Adam la'omran. Let's just remember that as we go through this, because we're learning Yevamos, and it's by and large a very hard Masechta. This was like casual stuff for them. Take a look at just the first case. Remember, this is a riddle. Ach me'av, a woman speaking. My brother from my father, v'lo me'aim. So far, so good. V'hu, and he is baila de'aim. He is the husband of the mother. V'ana, and I am brata de'antese, and I'm the daughter of the wife. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. I literally need like a topographical map to figure out what this one line means. It says Rashi, don't worry, I'll help you, because Rashi knows, or probably knew in some way, that the Yeridas Hadoros would be extremely sharp. So it says the Gemara, says Rashi, Dibra Maschil v'hu baila de'aim. What's the case? Achime avi, the brother, this woman is saying, this brother from my father, Nasa es imi, married my mother, Hainu. The Yaakov onas es isha, Yaakov violated a woman and she became pregnant, the holid bas. V'nasa Ruvain es anusas aviv, and Ruvain married this person, ubas Yaakov omeres Cain. This is the daughter of Yaakov who's talking. Simple. Amar Rami Bar Chama, Delok Rabbi Yehuda de Masnisen. As a parenthesis, this doesn't work in our Mishnah, because Rabbi Yehuda forbade the being with the family members of Anusas Aviv. But this case included a case of Anusas Aviv. Let's move on to riddle number 2. She says, Achu, he's my brother, Ubrihu, and he's my son. Achte Ana, I'm a sister. Dahai Didarina Akatfai, I'm a sister of the one that I'm carrying on my shoulders, namely my own child who I'm carrying on my shoulders. Again, another normal thing to talk about walking the aisles in Jewel. Says the Gemara, what's the case? Mishkachas la be'oved kochavim haba al bito. The case that we can come up with this a very unsettling family tree is when an oved kochavim has a child with his daughter. And that way, the child she carries is her child, but also her sister, because her father was the father of the child with his daughter, and therefore the granddaughter. Shlom alach lebri, this again, riddles. Here's number 3. Peace to you, my son. Bas achtich ana, I am the daughter of your sister. Mishkachas la be'oved kochavim haba al bas bito. That's a case where an oved kochavim has a child with his granddaughter. Deloy dedalu dabla, those of you who carry water pitchers. Leipul bechu satar patar. Satar patar is a riddle. You guys, I'm pouring this one on you. You need to figure it out. Tahai darina, the one that I'm carrying, who bar, he is my son. The ana baras achva, and I'm also the daughter of the brother. Mishkachas la'oved kochav ma'bal bas benam. Similar case. Baya, this is like a language of woe or oi. I guess oi. Okay. Me'ach v'hu av. We're talking about a case of a brother who's a father. V'hu ba'al, he is the husband. V'hu bar ba'al, he's also the son of the husband. V'hu ba'ila de'im, he's also the husband of the mother. V'ana berata de'itze, and I'm the daughter of that woman. V'lo yahiv pita, and he doesn't give bread la'achva yasmei b'nei berate, to the sons who are orphans, the sons of his sister. Wow. First long line. Mishkachas la be'oved kochavim haba al im. This is a multi-step case. Okay. Mishkachas la be'oved kochavim haba al imo. Okay. Step number 1. Bad start to a story. The oved kochavim has a child with his mother, and then v'holid mimena bas, and they have a daughter. V'chazar uba al osabas. This man who had a child with his mother is now intimate with this woman who is both his daughter and his sister. The Chazar Zaken, the grandfather shows up. Wow. Okay, case number 6. Ana ve'at achi, you and I are siblings. Ana ve'at achi, we are siblings. Ana ve'avuch achi, I and your father are siblings. Ana ve'imech achi, and I and your mother are siblings. Mishkachas ha'oved kochavim ha'bal imo v'holid mimenu shtei banos. We're dealing with the case where an oved kochavim is intimate with his own mother, and he has 2 daughters. And then he is intimate with one of these daughters that he had with his mother, and they had another child. This is how they refer to her as achte de'ime, the sister of the mother, which obviously was representative of an abnormal family tree. And for the 7th and final riddle, Ana de'at b'nei achi, we are siblings of the son of the brother. Ana ve'avuch b'nei achi, I and your father are the sons of brothers. Ana ve'imech b'nei achi, I and your mother are the sons of brothers. So says the Gemara, this case actually can happen in real life without there being any isurim. Ha behetera nami mishkachas la. What's the case? Kigon Ruvain. Sheyesh lo shtei banos. Ruvain has 2 daughters. Also Shimon v'nosav chad minas. He has 2 daughters, Rachel and Leah. Shimon marries one of them. Also Bar Levi v'nosav chad minas. And Levi, the next brother, marries one of those daughters as well. Brothers can marry sisters. V'ka'amar le brei de Shimon le bar. What?
Bar Levi. The nephew.
V'asa.
Bar Levi.
The son of Levi. Thank you. I thought you were saying the end of the line. It also says Bar Levi at the end of the line. Thank you. I missed that. But also Bar Levi, the son of Levi, v'nosav chad minayu, and marries not Leah but Rachel, whichever wife is left over. The Ka'amar Le, and they say to him, Berei de Shimon le bar berei de Levi. So we're talking about the child of Shimon and the grandchild of Levi, and that explains the 7th of the riddles. Kanai Nahara. That's not normal. Okay. Let's get into some sugyas that are a little bit more practical, I hope. Hagiores sheniskaira baneha ima. You have a woman who converted, and her sons converted with her. And then there was a case of Yibum. Lo choltzin v'lo miyabmin. Why not? Because Yibum doesn't go through the mother. Yibum goes through the father. So there is no father. The father's Ben Abram there. This comes up in brisses all the time when the fathers are going. I got a phone call today, induction next Tuesday, blah, blah, blah. The fathers are going. So let's say this woman had a bunch of boys. There was a case of Yibum. There is no Yibum because Yibum is only with the father's children. Fine. Afilu haraso shel rishon shelo biktusha v'leidaso biktusha. Even if the first child was conceived shelo biktusha when she was still a goy, v'leidaso biktusha. However, when he was finally born, it was biktusha, meaning even the tashmish has to be biktusha for the yibum status to work. Ve'asheni haraso v'leidaso kedusha. And if one child is actually fully Jewish, and not only Jewish, but conception-wise as well, he's Jewish. The same din would apply with a shifcha who was freed along with her children. Says the Gemara, B'nei Yudan Amsa, the sons of Yudan Amsa, this is the name of a maidservant, Ishtachru, the boys were freed. Shara lahu Rav Acha bar Yaakov leminsa of Nashe dehadade. Rav Acha bar Yaakov allowed women to marry these sons of Yudan Amsa once they were freed. Amar le Rava says to him, that's not right. But Rav Sheshes asar. Rav Sheshes forbids it. Amar le, congratulations. Who asar v'ana sharina. He says it's asar, but I say that it's mutter to marry the sons of Yudan once they were freed. And then the Gemara qualifies the machlokas between Rav Sheshes and Rav Acha bar Yaakov. Min ha'av v'lo min ha'em kulei amalo pligi d'shari. Everyone agrees that if they are min ha'av v'lo min ha'em, then everyone agrees that it is shari. Min ha'av min ha'em v'lo min ha'av kulei amalo pligi d'asir. Ki pligi, where's their machlokas about allowing this marriage to take place? Min ha'av u'min ha'em, when they are full to both parents. Man d'shari basar abba shadinan. According to the one who says that they're allowed to marry, that's because people refer to these children by their father, and they won't refer to the Amsa. They'll refer to the children by the Yid who married that woman. The Habene Planya, Karlu, they're going to call him as the sons of person X, the man. The Rav Sheshes, Karuluhu Nami B'nei Plonis. He argues that no, that they will actually refer to them as Bar Plonis. Also, the children of the mom. So that's why their concern is like the yichus. Are you going to say that this person's an eved, or is it going to sound like they're actually a yid? Depends whose name you go by. The Ika de Amar, this comes up a lot of brisses. I try to be makbid on this, not to like a lot of the families ask, can you please, when you call up the baby, can you say Ben the father's name, the mother's name? So this came up once in a frum shul here in the neighborhood with someone who I've known my whole entire life, and he married someone who was very, very makbid, very makbid. Is bezeh halash, and he said to me, you will be destroying my marriage if you don't say my Hebrew name, my wife's Hebrew name when you do the baby naming. I'm like, I gotta ask a shiur. Like, it's one thing if I get stuck in a weird scenario in secular America, Mela, nobody knows the difference. But when I'm in a frum shul and I'm a frum moel and I have my own integrity to be careful, I asked a shiur. Wasn't so simple. I spoke it out to Ray Robinson, who knew the family. I ended up saying the mother's name as well. In secular crowds, I tell them all the time, we only use the mother's name when there's illness, because the mother's a bailas rachamim. That's a real answer to a real question. But the name, the Hebrew name, is how we call up a kid to the Torah. You don't want me to call your kid by the mom's name. That's not good. That means that there's a problem. So that's the answer I've given in secular America, and everyone's like, "Oh, I didn't know. I didn't know. I wasn't aware."
There's that one case of where it was by the mother's name because she was a prisoner.
Yes. Yeah. What was that?
Right.
Yossi.
I don't remember.
Yosef. It came up a couple times in Shas already. We saw it a few times.
That's not a pretty case either. I'm just saying.
Yeah. That's not a pretty case either. So anyways, that's what happens when it comes to these kinds of cases. With brisses, I try to push away. Okay, says the Gemara, V'ika da Amar, some say, Palig Rav Acha bar Yaakov, afilu ba'achin min ha'em. Sometimes he even argues, even by achin min ha'em, without the father. My time because ger shenis gayer kikatan shenola dami. When we have a ger that converts, they are completely as if they are a katan, and therefore the machlokas could even apply min ha'im. We're going to stop right here at Tnan. We'll pick up tomorrow night at 8:40 with this sugya right here. And Amir Hashem will learn all of Tzadiches. I think or at least to the Mishnah on the bottom of Tzadiches on the base. Wednesday I'm out of town. I should be recording and posting that day. I'm not 100% sure yet. I'm going to land on time, but I have a graduation to go to. I'll figure it all out. I'll let you know. Wishing you all a beautiful night.